Hello everyone, welcome back to How Will It End? On today's episode, we have a delusional young man who strikes up an unconventional relationship with a doll he finds on the internet. Leave your predictions below on how this one plays out. And if you've seen this, don't spoil it. Now, let's see how it ends. In a small town in Wisconsin, a socially awkward man, Lars Lindstrom, stands looking out through the door of his apartment. Soon, his neighbor, Karin, comes knocking. Karin is Lars' in-law, whose husband, Gus, obviously is Lars' brother. Lars hides behind the door as she approaches but later responds. Karin invites him for breakfast, but he doesn't want to go. He tells her he has to go to church. Karin doesn't really mind and she offers him to come after church, which he accepts, and she leaves. Lars attends church service, and after church, Margot comes around to chat with him, but he flees. Margot is Lars' colleague at work and a member of the choir too. She has always had a crush on him, but Lars runs every time. He goes back to his apartment and later leaves for work. When Karin sees him drive off, she realizes that he won't be coming for lunch. Like the alpha that he is, I presume she'll ask him again. At work, his male colleague tries to talk to him about some love dolls on the internet, but Lars ignores him. Soon, Margot enters and greets them both, but Lars once again leaves the office at once. Wow, looks like Margot is just wasting her time. On his way back home that night, Karin waves him down abruptly to invite him to dinner since he didn't come for lunch. Karin and Gus have bet on Lars coming, where Karin shows that he will but Gus thinks that he won't. Lars still won't agree to come, but Karin forces him. She actually wants Lars to come over so they can talk because she has an opinion that something is wrong with him by how he spends a lot of time by himself. So, at dinner, Karin leaves Lars with Gus to talk. His brother speaks to him about moving in, but he declines, being pathologically shy and seeking to leave quickly. Lars and Gus have inherited their father's house, but when the division was made, Lars gets to live in the converted garage while Gus takes the house with Karin. Gus knew beforehand it would turn out cold, but he is quite happy he is able to talk to him, though not so much. The next evening, Karin puts a call through to Lars about a delivery arriving at his apartment. Lars rushes home immediately and dresses up neatly. Then he goes to Gus's home to tell them about his visitor whom he met via the internet. They are very happy that he at least now has someone to talk to, so they make arrangements for a room in their house for the two of them. Lars comes back with a doll, which he calls Bianca, to their surprise, and treats it like a human. He tells them she's Brazilian and has lost her parents. Both Karin and Gus are dumbfounded, but soon, Karin takes Gus to the kitchen to privately speak to him about Lars being crazy. They themselves must have gone crazy at this disgusting sight. Gus thinks of putting him in a hospital, but Karin calms him down somehow. And then they go to dinner. At dinner, Lars begins to talk nonsense about the doll. Soon, he asks Karin for some clothes for Bianca. He takes her to the guest room after dinner while he moves to the garage. Karin then tricks Lars in order to take him to the hospital by telling him to take Bianca to see a doctor the next day because of the stress of traveling and weather change. Then she goes back to the guest room to check out the doll while Gus also goes to browse the internet for dolls. They both go to bed worried. Lars buys Bianca a new wheelchair, and they go to the hospital with Lars talking to the doll on the way. When they get to the hospital, their family doctor, Dagmar, who is also a psychologist, pretends she has diagnosed Bianca with low blood pressure and urges Lars to bring her in every week for special treatment. She wants to be able to analyze Lars to get to the root of his behavior. Then she calls Karin and Gus in for a meeting where she asks if Lars has had any violent episodes so far and other questions. Gus doesn't care about anything else but having him tested, but the doctor tells him she doesn't yet know how, since she doesn't believe he is psychotic or schizophrenic and that he doesn't seem unwell but only appears to be having a delusion. Dagmar also says Lars' delusion can only end when he doesn't need Bianca anymore and asks the couple to help him by playing along. Karin won't find it hard, just Gus. She's always known how to play along from the start. The next day, Gus doesn't go to work because he's worried. He tries to tell Lars to stop seeing Bianca as a person but rather as a plastic doll, but Lars ignores him. Then Lars later goes to work, leaving Bianca there at the table with Gus. At the office, the secretary, Cindy, invites Lars to her party. When Margot asks if he'd go, Lars answers that he'll bring his girlfriend too. Margot doesn't have a choice but tells him she's bringing her boyfriend too. She has started seeing Eric since she finds Lars not seeming to notice her affection towards him. Gus and Karin go to seek help from some elders of the church with Reverend Bach present. Mrs. Gruner convinces them not to see Lars differently since they all can do the same and have done quite the likes of it. When another notion about whether he could bring Bianca to church arises, Reverend Bach just answers with the question, What would Jesus do? In church, part of the congregation feels weird with Bianca's presence. Margot also sees Lars with the doll and wonders. Soon, he takes her to the woods in his car while Gus goes to browse the internet about delusion. The next week at the hospital, he brings her for checkup and Dagmar places her in bed and tells Lars she's resting. Then Dagmar asks him to keep her company in her office and asks him about Bianca. Someday, while Karin and Gus wash Bianca, Gus feels yucky all of a sudden and stops, asking why they are doing it for Lars, but Karin laughs it off instead. Another week, Dagmar brings up a discussion with Lars about Karin. Lars tells her Karin has a problem, which is that she likes to hug just anybody. He doesn't like to be hugged or touched because it really hurts him, but with Bianca the story is different. Dagmar decides to help Lars about his being touched issue. She takes him for testing and successfully touches him with one finger and later her palm. But when she touches his neck with her palm, he shockingly springs up from the bed and picks up his clothes to leave. He goes to Cindy's party that night with Bianca. Cindy already understands the situation, and Margot comes later to help out, but Cindy's husband looks worried at the first sight, but later plays along too. Margot had sent a memo to the invitees earlier before the party, making them uncomfortable at the sight of Lars with the doll. Soon, Lars feels bothered seeing Margot with Eric. Lars must have something else wrong with him, and it looks like it could be dementia, because he's forgetting he's alpha. But I'd rather just agree with the doctor. The next week, Lars is sitting with Dagmar's hand around his arm and she asks him if it feels painful. Lars says he can tolerate it. Soon, as they speak about Karin's unborn baby, Lars begins to feel hurt and disturbed, remembering how his mother died when he was born. He paces around the room until Dagmar asks him to put his head between his knees and calm down. Soon, he later takes Bianca to buy things. Mrs. Gruner also takes Lars to have him volunteer at the hospital. In short, the entire community accept Bianca for Lars' sake and get her involved in numerous activities. Lars finds himself hence interacting more with people as a result. At home, Gus blames himself for Lars' predicament, saying he left Lars too quickly while they were still young and also left him to stay in the converted garage. Karin later pats him on the back and embraces him. Soon, Lars goes home and finds Mrs. Gruner preparing Bianca for work. Lars feels hurt that he doesn't have enough time with her anymore and angrily goes to chop wood as Mrs. Gruner drives her off. Karin comes afterwards after noticing his mood swing and goes to talk to him. She tells him they care about him and that is why they do all these things for him. Lars then decides not to let Gus put Bianca to bed anymore. At the office the next day, Margot introduces Eric to Lars and he shakes hands with him, but he's just not cool with seeing him around Margot. Eric is clearly no match for an alpha. He later stares all day long at Margot as she works at her cubicle in the office. Again, when it's time for Bianca's checkup, he tells Dagmar he asked Bianca to marry him last week, but she said no. Later, as he takes Bianca to the woods that evening, Lars fights with her. Gus later sums up courage to speak to Lars about what he did to him by leaving him alone while they were much younger and apologizes to him. Lars finds Margot the next day at the office crying over her breakup with Eric and goes to console her. Then she asks him to go bowling with her on Friday and he accepts. That Friday night, Lars feels kind of attracted to her while they played, but he later tells Margot he would never cheat on Bianca. However, Margot tries anyway. When Lars takes Bianca to the hospital the next week, he's bothered that the treatment is taking too long. He is also bothered about how Bianca had told him no when he asked her to marry him. They go to sleep that night and in the morning Lars screams saying Bianca won't wake up. Gus tries to tell him nothing is wrong with Bianca, but when Karin enters she suggests that Lars calls 911. The police arrive and they take Bianca in an ambulance to the hospital immediately. The doctor asks him to wait outside and he's very destabilized. Soon, the doctor comes out to tell them Bianca is dying and would need to stay at the hospital until she's stable. Karin firsthand thinks it's the doctor's decision to lie to Lars, but she explains to Gus and her that it's always been Lars making all the decisions. Lars himself found Bianca to be real and then unconscious. Now, he has decided that Bianca is now dying. The news gets out about Bianca's sickness, and the community gets worried for Lars' sake. Since Lars says Bianca would rather sleep over with him at home, the doctor lets him take her home. At some point, Gus and Karin take Lars to the lake, and as soon as they leave him with Bianca, Lars kisses Bianca and later considers her dead. The next day, the church arranges a funeral service for Bianca. Lars has asked them not to wear black, only he does. After the funeral, Gus stays back at the gravesite to thank Dagmar. Margot also goes to meet Lars and he asks her to take a walk with him, which she happily accepts. And that is how it ended. Make sure to comment below if your prediction was right or wrong. Also, Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.